But the thing is, we have to call file. Okay, we have to call readline again. File to read from dot readline. We have to call readline again. Because if we don't call readline again, we're still dealing with the very first line. So if I take this out, we read the first line, we're checking to see if the first line is not equal to an empty string, and we print the line. Right, we're still dealing with the very first line here. We haven't read the line again, so this is going to be an infinite loop, always checking to see if the first line is not empty. And the first line will contain something. It wouldn't be empty. And so this will always iterate. And so after remember when we call the read line, it moves the position to the next line, the read position to the next line, the beginning of the next line, and waits for us. First line will be stored in the variable line anyway, and then that's what the while loop will always check. We have to call the read line method again to read the second line, because anytime you call the read line method, it reads the line and move the read position to the beginning of the next line. And so let's just undo and call the read line method again. So you read the next line, right? Store it in the variable line again. It doesn't matter, these are the same name. This is just going to run one time. It's just reading the very first line, checking to see if that very first line is not empty. If it's not empty, that means it contains something, so print it out and then read the next line and store it in the variable line. And now the while loop would take over. Now this line here will contain the second element. It will check the second element to make sure it's not empty. If it's not empty, then print it out, and then it's going to read the next line, store it in a line, check that line. So basically, this is going to basically read lines and check it. And if at any point line is equal to an empty string, then the while loop stops. That means that if line is equal to an empty string, that means that the read position is here. That means the read position is right here, and it's trying to read an empty area. So it's going to return an empty string, which means it's done. It's done reading. There are no more lines to read from. And so this is basically going to print all the lines in the file, right? And so let's test it out. Let's remember this is a main method. Sorry, main function. Just, kind of very similar. This is a main function, and so if we don't call it, nothing happens. It's a function itself. We have to call it for something to happen. If I run the program without calling it, so let's say I just save the program, save the selected file in that same location where I saved the text file. So chapter 6, line numbers, and I save this as what is it called? Line numbers .py. If I run this, nothing happens. Don't worry about what you just saw. That was for the previous program. Okay, so if I run this, you see nothing happens because this is a main function. I've just defined it. I haven't called it. It's a function, so I need to call it. So now if I call the main function now, like this, now I've called it, and so it's now going to try to run what's in the main function. When I call this, it's asking us, please enter a name of a file. I need to make sure that this name that I'm typing matches the exact random stuff.txt. Make sure we add the extension .txt. Let's make sure that we add the extension .txt, because if we don't add the extension, it's not going to find the file. It's going to give us an error. Right? And so let's just do that. Okay, and so we call the main function, and we're going to now type in the name of the file, which is random stuff.txt. Hit enter and see it basically read from the file. You can see that. But the thing is, we have an extra line breaks in there, or basically extra lines, extra spaces in there. That's because these lines are actually stored in the text file. So the first line, for example, is stored in the text file with a hidden new line character appended to the right of it. We don't see it. That's basically what's causing these lines to be displayed this way in the file. Because when I was typing these I hit the enter here. That causes a new line character to be on the right of this, although we don't see it. But that's basically what's causing it. When I do that, as soon as I hit, when I write it this way, as soon as I hit the enter, that is creating a new line character before the second line, and there's an enter here. I hit a line break here. That is creating a new line character. When I'm reading from this file, I'm basically reading this line here and that extra new line character, basically that new line character, and I'm reading the second line and its new line character. So I'm basically reading a line here with its new line character appended to the right of it, and that new line character is basically what's forcing it to have that extra space. So what's really happening is this: I read first line, so it displays first line. There's also a new line character on the right of this line, and so that new line character is processed, and we know that the new line character it basically moves the position, the cursor, or you can think of it as the position from the end of the first line to the next line here. That's what the new line character, when it's being processed, that's what happens. Now, the print function itself, so now the position is here, right here. And so now the print function also itself, after printing out whatever you told it to print, okay, now we know that line, okay, what's stored in line will be the first line plus that new line character. It processes that. It processes the first line plus that new line character, which basically forces the position to move from the end of this line to the beginning of this line. And so the position will be right here. But the thing is, the print function always by default also ends with a new line character by default. And so after printing out everything, the first line, and then processing the new line character, and basically when the position is here, the new line, the print function also ends with a new line, meaning it moves the position from where it's at here currently to the next line right here. And so when the print function is done printing whatever it has to print, it also moves the position from where it's at to the next line right here, and then displays the next element. Now the next element, second line, also has a new line character at the end of it, basically on the right of it. And so it processes that new line character, which basically moves the position from the end of the second line to right here, to the beginning of this line. But the print function, after when it's done displaying that line, which is the second line, and basically processing the new line character, it also ends with a new line, meaning it moves the position from where it's at here to the next line, and then displays the other lines. And basically that's what's happening. The thing is, we don't want that extra new line character, so we can strip it away. We can strip it from the end of each line. We can, because basically when we call read line, we're actually reading the line itself plus that extra new line character appended to the right of it. So we can strip it from the right of this line. And the way we do that is, over here we're printing the line and that new line character. We're basically printing the line and processing the new line character. Let's just print the line. Let's strip the new line character from the line and display just the line. The way we do that is print a line, right? Prints a line, but strip. There's a function called rstrip. In other words, prints a line, but strip on the right. This R stands for right. On the right of this line. So strip on the right of this line. And what are we stripping from the right of this line? We are stripping a new line character. So I'm going to pass it in here as an argument. I'm stripping out the new line character. \n is the new line character. So in other words, look on the right side, this R stands for right, of this line, and strip the new line character. We are stripping on the right of this line the new line character. That's what we're doing. And then and after doing that, just display the line. And so now it's just displaying the line. Okay, when I run this, type in random stuff.txt, hit enter. Now it's displaying the line. So we can see on the file, it's displaying the lines, right? But then the print function by default ends with a new line character. So it displays the line, and then by default it ends with a new line character, meaning it moves the position from where it's at to the next line, and then prints the next line. By default, the print function ends with a new line character, so it moves the position from where it's at to the next line, and then prints the next line, and so on and so forth. We've basically stripped that extra new line character, so that's not processed when our lines in the file are being displayed. Okay. So now we are almost there. Now we need to basically have line numbers, right? Let's do that. And so let's create a variable, right? And let's call it line number. Let's set its value to 0. Let's see. Actually, because the program over here said that the line number should start at 1. So let's start line number to 1. Let's initialize it to 1.